We wonder why he allowed himself. Was he insane? Was he incapable? There is something which makes us not understand the next step. There is a wall in between our understanding and the understanding of the next evolution of consciousness. When we hear the sentence, love thy neighbor as thyself, we only understand in our animal terms. We have to love our neighbor because someday we require his help. Only in the commercial scale we understand the sentence of the great people. Only on the business side and the utilitarian aspect we try to understand the virtues. The next step should be given to us. Or we should know the skill by which we go to the next step. The next step is what is called the group consciousness level. That is also called the soul level, where the real meaning of the word love will be understood. We use the word love in many wretched meanings according to our own little comprehension. But sometime we come to understand the real meaning of love when the next level of consciousness dawns upon us. This is the final step of the evolution of consciousness in the human kingdom. When you begin to meditate upon the whole creation, close your eyes and find out how your respiration and your heartbeat are going on. Observe how the earth is revolving around itself. And observe the sunrise and sunset. And question why they are helping us. Why there is a sunrise to us and sunset to us. Why there is sunshine to us. Why there is the splendor of the seasons. Why there are the fruits and the flowers and the trees. Why the living beings are living in community. Why the clouds are showering rain upon us. Why the earth is becoming fertile to give us seed from the soil. Does it expect anything in turn from us? Is it working for us in the same dirty commercial terms? We understand. Then we begin to understand why the earth is giving us seed. It doesn't expect anything from us. So the human mind must break its bondages from the commercial level of understanding things, that virtues are only for personal security. The false belief that virtues are only for our safety and security, that conditioning should be broken. There is a higher value for the virtues of human behavior. There is a higher value, and that value should be understood. The practice to understand this is what we call yoga. And man knows who he is in his real sense, and his reactability will be transformed into the natural action. He stops to react and he begins to act. Then we find virtues unconditional, and the behavior of such people is only virtuous, and it cannot be otherwise. That is the real meaning of the word love. If such a person who has practiced yoga in its true sense comes to understand the next plane of consciousness which he has to reach, and to understand the avatars and the prophets and the masters, then he will understand what life is, what love is. That virtue is the law of life. Goodness, not greatness, is natural to man. Realization, not achievement, is the goal of man. Not achievement, you can use the same word. Like this, the values of the human being will be changed. This is what is called the dawn of spiritual consciousness. And when man begins to meditate the center of his own consciousness by observing the movements of his own respiration, sitting at a place in comfort, closing his eyes, relaxing all parts of his body, and beginning to observe the movements of his respiration, and thinking how the respiration is taking place of its own accord, how the heartbeat is taking its own course of its own accord, then he enters into the next plane of consciousness. From the negative pole of his consciousness, he enters into his positive pole. The present consciousness is working negatively as a negative pole, as long as it is working in the individual consciousness or the personality consciousness. We can call it negative because it receives impressions from outside. Light conditions the eye, sound conditions the ear, smell conditions the nose, taste conditions the tongue, and heat and cold condition the sensation of touch. These are called the 5 conditionings that are being invited by our consciousness every moment. Since we are receiving these things, we are at a receiving pole. Our mind is at a receiving pole of the environment, and it is environment conditioned. When we begin to meditate upon the center of our consciousness, when we begin to live mentally with our own respiration and heartbeat, then we will know where the positive pole of our existence is located. From within, the mind is working outside. The capacity to see is shining forth from within through the eye. The capacity to hear is shining forth through the ear. The capacity to smell is shining forth through the nose. All these same 5 faculties are shining forth from within ourselves. As long as they are conditioned by the environment, they are working with the negative pole. The moment from which you begin to exist, the transmitting center, which transmits the mind and the faculties of the senses from within outside, then there is the next awakening, the dawn of transmitting consciousness, not receiving consciousness. Then you will begin to live as the positive pole of yourself. The first aspect of consciousness, the negative pole, makes you a slave of your environment and a slave of your own behavior, whereas the second aspect of your living makes you a master of yourself and your senses and mind, and keeps mastery over your environment. This mastery is beyond competition, and 2 people who are masters of their own nature cannot have competition. The 2 persons begin to work as one person, just as 2 magnets properly arranged begin to work as only one magnet. But in the first stage, 2 people begin to work in competition with each other in the market, just as 2 magnets wrongly arranged repel each other. And when we properly arrange our consciousness with our center of consciousness through a true and proper practice of yoga, yoga does not mean only asanas. Unfortunately, in the Occident, in many places, yoga means some physical exercise of asanas. Yoga has 8 steps to follow simultaneously. The asanas we practice form only the fundamental aspect of it, the basis and the preliminary of yoga practice. So we should practice the 8-fold yoga of Patanjali, and it is not very difficult as people think. When we begin to follow it, And when we begin to meditate upon ourselves, then the next dawn of consciousness or the next awakening of consciousness is awaiting us. That is called the spiritual consciousness. Then we begin to work as one in everyone. The first aspect of consciousness is called the prisoner consciousness, called jiva in Sanskrit. The second aspect or the positive aspect of human consciousness is called the master consciousness, which is called Ishvara in Sanskrit. Patanjali says you have to submit yourself to the Ishvara who is in your heart. So the negative pole of your consciousness should submit itself totally to the center of the positive consciousness in you. This is the goal of mankind, to know and understand and behave in terms of the evolution of consciousness. This is about the evolution of consciousness of man on this earth. Similarly, there is the evolution of consciousness on all the planets, and the planetary evolutions are there, too vast to be covered in one lecture. I request those who are really interested among you to take up the study of the secret doctrine of Madam Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, where you find all the aspects of the evolution of consciousness in its totality. And after reading that book and appreciating, if you still find it interesting, you can go into the complementary and supplementary study of the same subject in the form of the 24 volumes of Alice A. Bailey. This completes the subject. But today, as far as our time permits, I have covered in a short and speedy way the evolution of the human consciousness on this earth and the awakening that is awaiting us. I once again thank our hostess for the opportunity that she has given me, and I once again thank all the people who have gathered here and given me their sweet presence this evening. Any questions relevant to the subject are welcome. Thank you. Behave affectionately towards the beings around us, and they will feel the affection through a telepathic way, and intelligence and understanding is not required to feel affection. And our affectionate attitude towards the beings around us, it hastens our spiritual evolution and next awakening. No, we can just equip the material for them to evolve, but we can't make them evolve. It is nature that permits them to evolve. They have to take their own course. And there is not much for us to help the animal kingdom except their physical needs. And there is much to help each other in the human kingdom, because it is we, the human beings, who do mistakes many on our way, and the animals are not permitted to do mistakes in their life. So it is only left that we should give them the physical requirements of food, drink and shelter and sense of security. More than that, we cannot help them in their evolution. Yes, when we are sleeping, normally we call unconscious. It is true only in one layer of consciousness. When we notice the fact that the lungs are respiring and the heart is circulating the blood even though while we are sleeping, we should understand that only one layer of our consciousness is sleeping, that is the layer of mind and the senses. All the other thousands of layers are at work. They can never be unconscious because we cease to exist if they are unconscious. So by consciousness, it is the consciousness of all planes that we mean, and not the one layer which we know as awakened consciousness. What we know as awakened consciousness is only one layer of our consciousness. All the other layers are always awake. They have never any sleep. It is only the mind and the senses that sleep. All the other layers are continuously working. And all these layers have consciousnesses, and we mean the total consciousness by the term consciousness. Except the one consciousness layer which we know as mind and senses, no other layer can oppose any other layer, because they belong to the intelligences of nature, not our intelligence, and because they belong to the Deva kingdom of existence, there is no opposition possible between any two layers of consciousness, because in fact they are not our level of consciousness. Our awakened consciousness is also one floating upon the surface of the other consciousnesses. By keeping good humor of his awakened consciousness, by allowing people around him, only those who do not feel too much of sorrow about him, we can help the evolution of